engineer it on my phone. Make sure we got, and then I can look at comments on YouTube and Facebook. Yeah, there it goes. All right. Okay. Let's see. There's now my signal might fade here and there. You just keep on going. And it could be you or me in the first 4 or 5 minutes, and then it'll set for the most part. Okay, let's see here. Looks like we're good. Let's see. Let me switch this. Yeah, I think we're live. So, anything you say from this point forward, people are going to hear it. Okay. All right. We got a couple of people in the house here. Turn this off. Okay. All right. What is this? This is episode 49. I'm going to go ahead and tag you. Let me tag you so you don't have to fool with that. Boom. Nope. Hang on, let me do it. Nope. I'll do it after the show. All right. So episode 49. Go back over here to him. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna just dive into some stuff. These shows are meant to highlight the individual. It's not a typical talk show. It's not a marketing and promotion kind of thing. There's plenty of platforms for that, but for people to show us who they are, what they're into, what makes them, what's their passions, where's their mind at, where's their curiosity at. And through that, we learn, we pick up codes and information and learn something about a brother or sister. So in this case, it's Gabriel. So Gabriel, thank you very much for coming in on fairly short notice. I know you got a fairly tight schedule. It's 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and so it's a little bit late, but it is Friday night, so this ought to be pretty good. We're probably going to go about an hour and a half. So you guys, he's going to have some information for us as well. I think that'll be a big part of the show, and we'll see where the conversation goes. If you have any questions, put them in the YouTube chat, Facebook chat, and I don't even know if you can do it on X, but anyway, just put it up there, and we'll get to it. I'll keep my eye on it. So thank you, Gabriel, for coming in. And I know you're what, in Ohio? Is that right? Yeah.
Cincinnati,
Oh, it's Cincinnati. Okay. That was my favorite baseball
Cincinnati
team when
area.
I was a kid. Yeah.
Liked
Yeah,
it.
there's a bit of a lag. So yeah, there's a bit of a lag. So that'll go away. So it'll kind of sound like we're interrupting each other, but you're going to be doing most of the talking anyway. So I don't know where you want to start. I'm okay with jumping into some of the things you're going to show to us, so we can talk about. Or if you want to tell us anything about yourself, or what you're into, or give us an update. Um, and I would say, at a minimum, because this is something that we all share. How are you handling 2025? How are you handling these massive energies that are coming in, these waves that are coming in, that more and more people are starting to concur one way or the other, and we're all kind of like trying to give some real-time information on it as to what's happening, because things are moving pretty fast. But yeah, go ahead. You got the floor.
In the earthly realm. Been very much focusing on my physical health. I try to go to the gym every single day, Monday through Saturday at least, and I give myself a break once a week. And as for my eating habits, I think that cutting out sugar is certainly something that helps your health overall. Because if you're a spiritual person who's operating in spiritual modalities, then you're naturally not going to feel very well when you're tapped into certain frequencies, especially when if you are trying to connect more as a way to enhance your spiritual level. That's not always the best approach for everybody because it's kind of like anything else in life. You have to prepare yourself for what you can hold. Wouldn't you say so? Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, all right. Um, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you. Did we
All right,
get disconnected somehow?
yeah, I got a call. Come back. Good question though, so hang on. Come on back, come on. There it is. Okay, you hear me now?
I can hear
You got
you.
me now?
It's a little
Okay.
in and out, but I can hear you.
What's because my microphone wire is screwed up and I was going back and forth. But and okay, so I didn't know you were going to start like that. I think that's a fantastic question and commentary, which ended with "Don't I think so?" I hadn't really thought about it. When I hear the words "have to" and "need to," I kind of have a natural you know, resistance, but that doesn't mean that it's not correct or incorrect. I'm just saying that that's just my own personal take on it. So there are times when I can resonate with it, and I'm resonating with what you're saying, your intentions and how you said it and how you delivered it. So let me go to what you were saying. Let me kind of ask you back so I can clarify what you're saying for myself and the audience. Okay. So you're acknowledging that there is let's just call it universal energy coming in waves. It's becoming more apparent. There are more people cluing into it. And then what you're proposing and what you're um exemplifying and following is that in an effort to connect, um, what would I say, to keep up and connect deeper, we might say, because if the universal energy is expanding and the conscious awareness is expanding, then we should have more access to the coding and the information and et cetera. And what you're saying is that you feel like it's very beneficial, if not an absolute prerequisite to that higher level or deeper communication, uh, directly uh, directly proportionate, you might say, to the level of your habits, of your lifestyle, in particular, uh, physical um, conditioning and what you eat. Is that kind of what you were saying?
I believe that they are key elements, and I think a good
Right.
example is some of the Tibetan monks, especially the old style monks, who are the ones more specific for for example, the warrior monks. They have a regimen where they have to do a lot of workout routines every day. It doesn't mean that they're not still monks. There are those who focus more on the higher energies, who focus more on being, who work more towards the goal of and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, a Buddhishvata. How do you pronounce it? You know, the road to becoming a Buddha, right?
Yeah, Bodhi shift. I don't know. I don't know. I can see the word, but I'm not about to try to pronounce it. But yeah, keep going. This is great.
But you have to factor in that most of us live in the material world. Most of us either have a job or have to live in a house or an apartment, and we make an income, and all of that is very material. And as long as we continue to live in that material world, we have to learn how to stay grounded and not be so up in the air all the time, because it can be extremely uncomfortable and even at times a detriment when we're all the way up here when we should be a little more on the level just to keep our sanity.
Yeah, I'm digging this. It's okay. It's so crazy how everything happens I've had a high energy day, with some physical, uh, what do you call it? Purging. And, but I went on to X today, to look for material for something I'm working on. And one of the things I found, and I can't recall it verbatim, but it's along the lines of what you're talking about. And basically, what the guy was saying, he was very plugged in. And by the way, I'm very impressed now that I've had a few weeks on X looking around. There's a lot of people that we would relate to, but once you get past all the, movie script and BS. But there are people out there, you might call light workers, star seeds, are certainly tapped into this type of conversation. Now, what I saw today that seems to be related, almost like a setup to talking to you, because I had no idea we would start like this, and the guy was talking about this. He was saying basically, yeah, what you're saying. Yeah, it's become aware. This is what's happening. Uh, and he said you can go out there and hang out up there and go through it like that, but it's becoming a bit of a challenge. And very basically talking about, similar to what you're talking about, and just to break it down to, like, the basics, to simplify things, to experience life, because above all else, that's what you're here for. Is this the unique part of this particular incarnation is the human part of it. Now, the other thing that you alluded to, I think you actually stated, and I think he alluded to, was that there was something to be said for certain individuals that we might call, and this is not to create superiority or inferiority or anything like that, but there are people, let's just say, that are sensitive, hypersensitive, higher frequency, more plugged in, or whatever you want to call it, that are more likely to have greater discomfort, uh, at, I might say, like the cellular level or the somatic level, the body level. And so I can see where there's some type of connection, and my soul took me to see that video before I come and talk to you. Um, but yeah, so, and I just want to clarify that. I think you were saying the same thing, is that certain people, probably the people that have been tuning into this type of platform over the years, um, would probably be, that are more sensitive, more hypersensitive to the energies, and we're kind of trying to figure out what the hell to do, because it's all moving so fast, and we have spent a lot of time out there downloading, right? And that was the way the guy kind of ended it. He said, it's more about what we're sending up now versus what we're bringing in, because that's kind of a foregone conclusion, and that's already happening. It's happened, and it's going to continue to happen, and whatever we do, right? But yeah, go ahead. Thank you for letting me kind of connect the dots.
And to build off of what you said for what's happening out there and here, and basically in a nutshell, how we can ground, basically, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think yeah, ultimately that's what he was saying. He didn't go into the diet and the exercise as, intricately as you did, but essentially coming back to, what I guess you would call it, presence, with an emphasis on nature and being outside, at least for, a little while during the day, and just connecting in kind of that, that new atmosphere of flow, and of balance, and harmony, because we're able to see it and feel it and now do it, with more ease and grace. But it's a different kind of, modus operandi than we've had in the past.
absolutely. And now that more people are starting to wake up spiritually, I think that a greater, you could say, acceptance towards other people's spiritual philosophies, religions, worldviews are coming into play, because it's not so much about the end game per se, but how we live our lives, how we present ourselves as peaceful people, as helpful people to each other. And something that I've learned for how ancient people grounded themselves is through their walks together. And that's something that I would like to share with you today because archaeologists apparently plan to dig up Noah's Ark over at Mount Ararat. And I, I saw that as a post. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but if they do plan to do that, then they first need to understand what is there. And because it's something that I researched a great deal, in addition to many other earthworks around the world, in addition to the religious history and spiritual philosophies, they need to first understand that what they believe is Noah's Ark, whether there's a giant ark underneath that, there appears to be an earthwork there of a person's face. And if they go to dig that up, then it would essentially be desecrating a most holy site. It would be like taking bulldozers to Mount Sinai. It's not good. And I'm not saying that they would do that to that extent, but who knows? I think that I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Can we do the screen share now?
Yeah, go ahead. It's set up and ready to go. Yeah.
Okay.
That just so I can stay connected here. I'm a little bit older than you, so I got to concentrate a little harder. But so you were talking about uh, 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 a big part of the grounding in the ancient cultures has been the walking together kind of thing. And then you went
Yes,
into what you're about to show us here.
exactly. It appears they would go to reshape Earth in images and ways that are beautified to create faces and whatnot. And here it kind of looks like there's a person wearing a beanie, a yarmulke,
Hmm.
and that's very intimate to the Jewish culture. So if they start removing all of this earth, then what's going to happen is they're going to deface the face of the ark. And if this is meant to be either the face of Noah or how the ancient people viewed God in those days, well, I think that's a major concern because in the books of Moses, the Torah, the first few chapters, when you read the Exodus story, they say that God shall not be made into any graven image. And here we see a face and we see that yarmulke on top of it. So it's possible that this is the face of Noah, or how the ancestors may have described Noah in those days. But how exactly does this relate back to the lands? Well, first, let's take a closer look just so that you can see what I was talking about, and I'll guide my cursor across this for you. So just take your time as you look at that. And it almost looks like there is a beard like interpretation, which could be similar to the pharaohs because of how this section here comes down and moves a little outward towards the end, perhaps a little more than what you see with the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. But there's even possibilities for other smaller faces, like this could be a chin, that could be a nose. If you're able to see this dot here, that could be an eye, and other areas of this ancient earthwork as well. But let's get into the detail as for what this could be representing. So I'm going to scroll up to this post right here, and we're going to see how this may reveal to people how to travel the lands. So, how familiar are you with Asia?
With Asia,
Well, yeah,
you
with
mean
the continent of Asia, what it
you
looks
mean
like.
look, looking at it on a map like this, I'm fairly familiar with it. Yeah, but not like I've not walked it. You know what I mean? No, but I know Eastern. I know how it butts up to Europe and pretty much understand the layout of it.
Okay.
But go ahead and explain it. Go ahead and explain it.
Well, along the Himalayan mountains, just a little north, there are these lakes. And
Hmm.
if you follow the lakes, you'll see that there's a curve to them. So people would think that, oh, the yarmulke is supposed to represent the whole area of the Himalayan mountains. Well, maybe, but not necessarily in this case. When we take a look at the face here, it does appear as if there's something here. And I'll scroll to the next image where we can take a closer look and we see how the chin does extend to an area which could match, and we even see how there's a slight curve here in this land. If you're able to see that, some people can and some people can't. If you're a numbers person, then you might not be able to see it as easily. If you're an art and history person, then you might be able to see it a little bit better. But like for example here, when it comes to the lands themselves, uh, the mouth extends a little further than what I saw on the earthwork, but it sort of looks like the people worked the lands in a way where they beautified them, maybe through agriculture and mining. There's all sorts of techniques that they can employ, even the use of canals. But it does sort of like it does kind of look like these are teeth, possibly, and that the guy is maybe smiling, and that there's a upper lip, and how you can travel what is south in this direction, moving up into a nose area. And I'll show a clean image for you just so you can see what I'm talking about. And obviously, it's loose to interpretation, but you see the general idea for how it can be used to travel south from here. There's even the possibility of a face concept, maybe a pharaoh's beard. But I'm going to get into basically how the pharaohs ruled the ancient world and how it's very connected to the Hebraic culture for Israelites and possibly other cultures.
Okay. Couple things. Uh, I don't have near the time researching anything like this. I have seen, over the years, 'cause I have done a lot of research over the years since about 2011. Um, One of the things I've seen, actually, it'd be more than one, are things that have been created that are visible from the sky, be they figures like you're showing us, or other things like I can think of one off the top of my head was kind of like a it's kind of looks like a land um, that have I remember being in Kauai on the north side looks like a dragon. There's another kind of a mountainous area, hilly area that looks like a lady laying on her side. And then I've seen a lot of things in regard to like rock formations and that type of thing that look like it was petrified. You know what I mean? I find it really interesting that you're talking about the, kind of traversing the land and even manicuring the land in some kind of uh, connected way. Uh, that that kind of has a multi-purpose, not just to like to preserve a code or a consciousness of some sort. So yeah, I'm interested to hear what you have to say now about the pharaohs.
We will get to the pharaohs in a moment, but if you think about what the Jewish people have presented in their history, they talk about the world being flooded, and Noah was the first person to till the earth after the flood, just like how Adam was the first person to till the earth. And I think it's interesting how in the story, I've heard it on social media about how there's certain words used for the creation of man, and how when it's said for man to populate the earth, that it's essentially saying to replenish it, as in there was something there before. And if that's the case, if that is what the language implies, and that's a big if, then it means that there was something already here going on, and that Adam was not technically the so-called first per se, but very likely the first of his people, the father of mankind. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there was not some other type of people here before. And we're going to get into that as well.
Well,
But
there's, one good thing about what's happening with this AI thing and the way the information's moving, it does make it a lot easier now to do the research. But you do have to check out, you know, you have to, I think you have to drill down a little bit to figure out, what's legit, what you resonate with, and that type of thing. Now, I do know through years of research that there are really almost every single culture has the flood, okay, which was, 10, 12,000 years ago. Um, Noah has many different names. Um, and then there's also something connected to what you're talking about in terms of what was here before and what brought certain, let's just say, energies or even species or other species here prior to that. And so, we could even look at shortly before the flood, the Atlantis, and that type of thing. Um, but so uh, you're you're really starting from the flood, from where you're going this direction, like from the flood forward, right?
we go to look at the raised area of the ark. Notice how it reveals a perfect path, truly a perfect path, after coming from this, I believe, is a mountainous area right here, because there's a body of water here and it looks like it continues into over here. But it looks like it might be a little bit easier to pass through here for some reason. But when we go to look at that arc, we see where the line is, where to pass through, and how when we follow that line, we continue towards the edge of the continent of Asia. And if we were to keep following that, we would go so far northeast in Asia that we would eventually reach Alaska, which is right here where my cursor is. So, right there, it is indicating to us how to travel from one land to another, and that if you follow the boat, they promise you there's land over there. In other words, this wouldn't have just been a story for Noah. This would have been the Noahic peoples, a whole generation of sailors. And if this earthwork is possibly describing certain lands that may have been lost at one point, if that's a big if, then it's possible that this could predate 5,000 years old. It could predate a history that said it's that old. And we're going to look into why in a little bit. But for now, let's look at the other interpretations for how this face concept may reveal to ancient travelers how to travel other lands. Because now that we revealed how they teach us how to travel from Asia to North America, let's now take a look at how
I
this
see.
may
I
also
see where.
describe
Yes, I see where you're
how to
connecting it.
travel right.
Uh, to the Bering Strait, basically, right? To
Right.
Alaska. Now,
Yeah.
I remember years ago having a
Demonstrates.
podcast. I remember years ago having a podcast with I'm not sure who it was, but somebody that was pretty people are pretty aware of. I can't remember who it was, but it may have been Mary Rodwell. I can't remember for sure. But at the time, I think it was Michael Tellinger, uh, if I remember correctly, was doing some research, or they were doing some research, and it wasn't just him, if that was who it was, but someone like him, and there was three or four people involved. I remember this person telling me about it, and I remember some of it, seeing some of it like on YouTube and that. But that, as I'm listening to you, because it's almost like a template, you know what I mean? That they were talking about how there were other areas around the world where there was a raised area, and that there was some evidence of, and I'm not saying this is accurate, I'm just recalling what was said at the time, because it was kind of a template scenario where there was actually, I guess you would say, for all intents and purposes, more than one spot. There was a few different spots, and they all served the same purpose. And it was, I guess a theory of some sort, but it had this, it's like a premeditated template, with some pre advanced notice. Get to these spots, and then we're going to work from there. Then some kind of network of connectivity.
Absolutely. And what I'm sharing with you now is exactly what you're talking about on a grand scale for what could very well be what the Greeks may have referred to as Atlantis. Think about this. Northwest Africa is larger than Asia Minor, and it would have been divided by a great river. And when we think about the sailors of Northwest Africa, well, what's west of Africa? What's west of Europe? What's west of the Mediterranean is a whole nother series of continents, North and South America.
Mm.
So if the people were great sailors, then don't you think that they should be living up to that name? I think so. And I
What do you
think
mean?
we do
What do you mean by that? Live up to that name, just so I
live
can
up
understand.
live up to the name of Atlanteans, sailors of the Atlantic. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's funny too. I was just watching this today. I can't remember the guy's name, um, but I've watched him quite a few times. I probably put in a few hours with this guy. He's a philosopher, but he's also multi anthropology, many other things. And his a lot of his forte is the the history, or the going back to that time. And one of the things that he was talking about, and I've heard this with others too, was when Atlantis went down, there were several directions that groups from Atlantis went. Some people call it the Atlantis priesthood. They went to Mesoamerica, they went to Tibet, they went to, just different places. One of the things I did want to ask you, though, before you get too far in, was where is Arafat in relation to Gobekli Tepe?
You mean Ararat?
Yeah, whatever it's called, Ararat, the Mount Ararat. Where Noah's Ark is, what the picture you were showing us, the first picture you were showing it. Where is that in relation to Göbekli Tepe? There you go. Cool.
So you see it pretty well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, first take a look at this, and then I'll show you.
That's pretty cool.
I guess I do have to look at it from the other side. It's several hundred miles away, I believe. It's definitely a distance. But when you take a look at this Mount Ararat, what does it kind of look like to you?
Pyramid.
Well, yeah, but it says that the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat. And if you really take a look at these mountains, it kind of looks like a boat.
Hmm.
Kind of looks like a boat rising from the waters. And if that's the case, then it could be an interpretation for sailing. So anyway, I'll show you where Göbekli Tepe is. It's somewhere around here.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because God, I wish I could remember who the hell I'm. Hang on a second. It might have been Matthew. What's his name? Matthew St. Croix. Matthew. Anyway, that one of the things that's in the text is after the flood, after everything was over, and the migration started or whatever, or to resettle or whatever, that there was many I guess you would say devotional sacrifices of animal different animals to the gods, so to speak, and that he was connecting that to Noah's Ark, and he was connecting it to that scripture or the text, because in Gobekli Tepe, there's many depictions, altars with all these different animals, and many of them which were cited in that text. That's the only reason I was asking. So uh, it looks like it's close from here, but you're saying several hundred miles, which would make sense. I'm sure it's a lower elevation too.
The length is saying that it's 351 miles,
That's
while
not too far.
the kilometers is 566.
Mm, mm.
And what's really interesting is that when you look at the iconography of the ancient world, it's very possible that the concept of the square-headed man, which I'll get into in a little bit, could be tied to lands like this right here over in Turkey, and I think I want to say that it's either Jordan or Syria. Let me check. I have to get to the layers and exploration. Okay, got to zoom out a little bit so I can see the name of the country. Okay, Syria's right here. That's along the head. Are you able to see the face
Oh yeah,
interpretation?
yeah, yeah. I can see it. Yeah, definitely.
And even over here, it's like the what the pharaohs would wear on their crown. So I think that's really interesting. And there's something I measured here. It's approximately 1.3 miles across. And the reason why I did that is because it's very obviously dug out. It's much lighter than the rest. And even though that's probably intentional for whatever reason that they did with Google Earth. I mean, you can tell that this is very, very light, very shallow. And that would make sense if they're creating an earthwork of the lands, reshaping shorelines to beautify them as such. But anyway, we see the evidence of mining. We can scroll down here and we just see how they just absolutely tore up the lands or maybe even made mounds. Who knows? I think that nothing's off the table when it comes to how advanced the ancient world truly was.
No, yeah,
So,
no question about it. There's no question about it. Um, and it,
so let's take a look at the Americas now. And just like how I revealed the Yamaka aspect for this interpretation of North America, uh, what are these lands, firstly? Well, let's take a look at what these lands are. I believe that okay, I don't think I have the names of the lands
is that North
for the
America?
states.
Is that North
Yes,
America?
yes, that's
Where's
Baja
Baja
California
California?
right
So it's
here.
probably, if are you going to show us the Serpent Mounds? I mean, that's the Ohio area. Is that right?
Yeah, I can get to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that
No, I'm just saying,
definitely
is
ties
that the
into.
area you were showing us?
No, this is over by um, Arizona,
Oh, okay. It's in the Four
uh,
Corners.
a
Yeah.
little bit of Utah,
Yeah.
Albuquerque. But if we take a look at this right here, notice how there's a face interpretation. I'm going to zoom in, and it kind of looks like there's teeth that they made, similar to what we saw over in Asia. So, what it indicates is these are probably the same people making these earthworks if they are going to the extent of making teeth. And maybe this guy has a mustache to him. Maybe it's some type of dragon headed face or. But anyway, we see an eye, a nose, teeth, a chin. Um, as for the top of the head, there's something really significant that we need to talk about, and that is the classic triangular, basically pyramid style crown that I discovered in the ancient iconography for the ancient world. And how well can you see that on your end where the breaks in the lands are? I didn't hear you.
Yeah. Hang on. Just having
Okay, I can hear you now.
weird tech stuff go on. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you all right now.
Oh yeah. So, yeah, what was I going to ask you? Hang on. Um, okay, so here's the thing. As I look at these things and think of some of the other things that I've seen over the years, just doing research, to include the pyramids all over the world and other monoliths, some, how do you create these things without being able to have an aerial view? So, you know what I mean? It's like, unless you had a set of plans or a blueprint, and I'm not throwing shade on this at all. I'm saying it feels like to me that there would have to have been, and there has been, some type of cooperative tandem effort between, let's just say, um, uh, sky people and those on the land.
Sky people in a little bit, actually, um, because they do play a very intricate role to the story. And it's even possible that they are the ones who are primarily responsible. But as for, is it possible that people at one time were smart enough due to elongated skulls having greater brain volume, brain capacity, more neurological interactions going on, not just from head binding necessarily, but also the evidence of
Well, you're
interspecies interbreeding with Neanderthals and Denisovans since they had bigger brains, such
yeah.
as what we see over in Peru, which apparently the archaeologists and paleontologists don't want to talk about, but there's evidence just based on their uh, bone structure.
So I
Uh,
mean, what you're saying is that it's what you're saying is it's possible that they're very smart in some other, in let's just say a multi-sensory, a greater multi-sensory sensitivity or capacity, where they may have had skills and abilities that we don't. And then I think the other thing, I would say in regard to,
I didn't catch all what you said, but the gist of it is there were certain elements that the ancient
was this
world.
a coordinated effort between.
I believe there was a coordinated effort, and we will talk more about the sky people shortly based on earthworks. But let's first
Yeah.
talk about how we also see correlations in Africa, in Egypt, Chad, Libya, um, Niger should be over here, and the Sudan is over here. Perhaps not so much for the nose, it's a little bit of a different interpretation, but we do see the crown that I didn't go into so much detail on zooming in, but we see like Chad is right here, and then this is a vegetative region. But this here, where my cursor is on, that's Lake Chad. But we do see the similarities.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, this could also go back to, because I mean, I was recently, again, doing some research. And again, I can see the guy's face, but I can't remember his name. Uh, but he's an accomplished author. And they were talking about some of the things that have come through in a combination of anthropology to include remote viewing, and many, many things going back, and compiling everything, CIA, this and that, whatever. And part of that information was that there was a certain proportion of isotope that they discovered that you can find nowhere else in the solar system at a minimum, uh, on Mars. They found it on Mars, and they found it on our nuclear test sites on the Earth. Now, the reason I bring that up is because as the theory went, uh, there was um, a civilization on Mars, okay, and their planet was burning out, and they had to look for another one. And they found this green planet that had all this vegetation. So the long story short, the only way they could come in and um, inhabit the planet, you know, and was to terraform the planet. So this again, I think is that you're talking about that are serving, because if you look at Mars, for one example, there are faces there too, right? And as well as pyramids. So I wonder if there was an original terraform that utilized, this type of template. I wonder.
I think that they may have, because it is truly the hallmark of an intelligent species to essentially say, hey, they're here. They're here. And we can either go into the alien head mummy map right now, or we can go into the pyramid map of Asia, literally describing Asia. It's totally up to you. It
Well, I
just might
think,
take
yeah, huh? You think what?
it just might take me a moment to find the alien head map of Africa. But there's also evidence, for example, on the pyramids for how to uh, travel South America.
Okay, right. And I think some of the theories put forth too with some of these monolithic structures, the things that you're showing us, was that they were navigational nodal points, not just to travel horizontally, but to come in vertically from the stars, basically. Um, but wherever you go with it, whether it's the alien one or the pyramid one, uh, can you tell us what, why is this important for us? Is it bringing back the memories? Is it providing code as we become more aware of our background, of our history and our ancestry?
Yes, absolutely. The more that people go to connect with these things, the more that they're going to open the vault, essentially, for everything that the ancestors were doing, who they were communicating with, and how they were operating spiritually, not just in their spirit, but in their earth walk, the sacred journey. Then everything's going to just open up from there. It's going
So,
to
so
light up.
no, I agree. I mean, I experienced some of that today, uh, with actually with some of the information I was giving you, but basically to be revisiting or coming into new awareness in some cases, everything from uh, the natives.
I think you paused.
Back
I'm not hearing you.
into the solar system and galactic. But okay, so let me just cut that short. Can you hear me? Can
I can hear you now.
Okay. So as an example, what has this done for you personally in your soul expansion, your developmental growth, and gaining this awareness in this incarnation? How has this helped you energetically? Uh, is it in the manner that you described, and can you give us an example?
Well, I think the best aspect for my life is having the freedom that it provides me with, knowing that I am not bound by the teachings of what a priesthood may share, whether that priesthood is in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, wherever those teachings are coming from. I'm able to look at the bigger picture and see exactly what our ancestors were talking about. And having that reassurance is absolutely so helpful, um, because it's something that can grant me peace without the worry of all the fear mongering that they say, essentially. And I'm not trying to, discount anything. Um, but I think it's important to really focus on the more positive things for how our ancestors came to know each other and the peace that they attempted to achieve by uniting both their lands and peoples. And I think that it also goes into the whole aspect of modern human, Neanderthal, and Denisovan, because when we look at these heads from Peru, we see the elements of Denisovan for the jaw. And we also see the elements of Neanderthal man. Just take a look and you can see for yourself the
I'm a big fan of
similarities.
Robert Sepper. I'm a big fan of Robert Sepper, so I'm very familiar with this part of the story, the different I guess you would say species or subspecies. Uh, and I love his work, and I love the way he presents it very, very objectively. Um, but again, like what you just said, so as a person, as a soul in your body, as in this experience as Gabriel, has this taken you to a point? I'm just going to throw some stuff out there so I can kind of understand. I understand that you're very curious with it. I understand that it's very intriguing for you and you're very passionate about it, and I love that. Has it assisted you in terms of like removing the fear programming, death programming? Has it brought you closer to, let's just say, a personal alignment with your eternal, the eternal aspect that you are? And I'm not presupposing any of this. I'm just trying to find, you know, is there something that people can point to or look forward to as they dig into this type of stuff?
Yes.
Hmm.
Uh, I grew up in Catholicism and the Baptists for the father side of my family. So my mother's Catholic, father's Baptist. But I think something that you can look to in Judaism, and from what I see, mostly now for the more Islamic communities, such as what's over at Mecca, the big square that they walk around, the altar of
Cu-
Abraham dedicated to God,
You mean
that's a Mecca, right?
the black cube of Saturn? That one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do we see here? This is from the plane, the photograph that a plane took. Kind of looks like there's a flying saucer here. Just kind of wanted to point that out. Just noticed
Mm.
that. But anyway, we see the square-headed man concept. So this would be the neck. This would be the back of the head. That would be the front of the head. It kind of comes to a point here, and notice this line. We'll get into that. Notice how there's kind of a mark upon the forehead right here. Um, it's a loose interpretation, but
Now you're
there is,
now you, just to be clear, you're saying that you're more inclined to go with that these are things that were created by the boots on the ground, so to speak, and that they're landscaped, for lack of a better word, uh, and they're more likely to be where the land has been formed versus a monolith. Uh, is that right?
but I'm open to many interpretations.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely open to interpretations from our star brothers and sisters. For example, when we take a look at this section of the Ricard structure, we kind of see what kind of looks like a stormtrooper's head. You know, stormtrooper from Star Wars, kind of the mouth and nose right here and the eye. It's kind of funny how we can see that interpretation, and it's just right there. Um, and maybe the face is actually looking this way. Maybe that's a mouth and that's the eye. Maybe there's a couple different interpretations. Um, but we see this here for the Hudson Bay. And obviously, the Hudson Bay looks like a great water turtle. So maybe before the water levels rose, that's what it looked like. And maybe they rose the water levels by going to dry lands and maybe melt some ice around the world to create these massive acts of art. Literally carving our world just slicing it up into the greatest tapestry in our solar system.
Well, that was one of the things I was referring to. I should look these names up. uh, in that story of and it's not the first time I've heard it. I've heard it from and which I find interesting now. I find it really interesting now that I'm going to these platforms, these popular, I don't want to say commercial, but the more popular platforms on the internet, okay, where they have a variety of discussions which were rooted in disclosure and then evolving with people like Hancock and so on. They're talking about they're talking about from an anthropological standpoint, a scientific standpoint, that people talk about chance on this information, Orion onto the Earth and the terraforming of the Earth. And in many of those cases, and including published author.
We're hearing you again. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
I
good.
got knocked out. Energy's high.
Absolutely. And something that I want to share with people about the possibility of the what some people think are aliens or ETs, it looks like there are structures very near this face. And this face is not too far off from the structures, but
That looks like a reptilian.
possibly looks like some type of ET head, maybe. Just looking at the big eyes, and I mean, we see that this has been manipulated. When we go to look at the eye, I mean, you see this square and circle, and it even kind of looks like there's a weird looking face right here.
I see a circle. I
Yeah,
see a
there's
circle.
yeah, this could be like an eye, this could be a mouth, maybe a weird looking ET guy. Kind of looks almost like a dinosaur, but we do see that
Well,
eye
that could
right
be
there.
that could be the case too, you know. Because in this show, I'm going to look this guy's name up so you can have it. You'll probably know who it is. Um, but one of the things they were talking about was that these isotopic anomalies or anomaly that was on Mars or that's on Mars, uh, more or less coincides with uh, when the Earth was terraformed. So let's say it was, 60, 70, 80 million years ago, where, they're tracing this, uh, anomalous isotope thing on Mars is around the time when the dinosaurs were wiped out. And so the theory there was that in order to terraform, had to, eradicate the dinosaur ago. So it's not beyond the possibility that some of what we're even looking at today might have been a giant sentient being that was laid to rest where it fell. No different than the woolly mammoth they found with the food still in its stomach. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of possibilities here.
Absolutely. And I think that the greatest possibility is just by looking at what's here. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a moment because I don't know how good it would be if you saw the posts of some of my friends and whatnot. You know, some people might say, "Oh, I wanted that to be a little more private."
Yeah. You don't want to do that. Um, yeah, we got about another 15 minutes here. Um, but yeah, I mean, this stuff is fascinating to me. I mean, it's kind of like anticlimactical for me because the way everything, as you talked about in the beginning, the way everything has pushed us by force or flow to be present with our current situation. You know, I have an old saying that I've kind of gone by since I reawoke in 2011, and well, I say a saying, this is like, you know, the soul telling me, the human, uh, you know, there's certain things that we came into this world with, whether we remember them or not. Okay. But there's something that we didn't come into this world with, into this incarnation with. And that is the experience we will have from birth, coming out of the womb, to the day that we physically transition. And so I think it, and I have noticed that a lot of these topics are really starting to break through now. But again, you know, how much more do we need to know? Is it going to help us? Is it going to expand us in an effort to be a more dynamic, more potentialized human being uh, with a soul inside? You know what I mean? In terms of creation and creating something new. That's what intrigues me. And you know, with this well, I don't want to say this explosion of technology, but this explosion of technology that's being shared now. Even though we know there's a shitload more out there that hasn't been shared. And let me ask you this: do you feel that, be they star people, be they subterranean, do you feel that we have family? You might say, other species that are living in conjunction with us, whether we can see them, you know, from our limited visible light spectrum perspective. Do you feel like that there are beings, species that are living within the earth, that are living on the earth, and that are living in the skies?
Not only do I feel that, I've found the possibility, a great possibility of evidence for that, especially on Solomon's Island. In the Solomon Islands, on the main island, I've been researching it with a group of people, and I found what could be the bones of giants. And there are holes in the mountains where it looks like giant people could go into. And there's folklore about giants, and the people that I spoke with, they said that they've actually seen them.
Well,
So
yeah, I mean, there's irrefutable evidence of giants even going back 120, 130 years. I mean, particularly, as one example will be in Catalina Island, off the coast of California, and on the mainland. There's an old story, and I think this one is in California. And I forget the name of the tribe. It's not one of a better known tribes, but they talked about the history they had. And I want to say they start with a P, Pekingese or something like that. But anyway, they have a whole oral history of this combative relationship with these red-headed giants. And it was about, I want to say, about 100 years ago. There was a cave that was discovered because in the oral history of this Indian culture, they talked about how it finally evolved to a point where they came down to a kind of a last battle with these giants. They figured out how to fight them, and they pushed them into this cave, and then they I think set the interior of the cave on fire, and they closed the cave up. Now it's like 100 years ago. This guy goes out and he finds this cave, and all through the cave are these giant bones, which validated the oral history of this particular Indian tribe. So I don't think there's any question. Even in the Bible, they talk about the size of some of these folks that were very very big many years ago.
Absolutely.
Interesting stuff.
And yes, and something that I'm about to share with you is an island over in the Arctic Circle, Arctic Ocean, maybe. Um, I found I found an earthwork of what appears to be a guy holding a tablet. So let's go to take a look at that now because it could relate back to Moses.
And
And
Moses
what's even
and
more startling is that there's an earthwork of an ET. So as we take a look at this would be the basic concept for the head of Portugal and Spain. And I wish that we got more into that, but it's like there's a face looking left, and then we see this face right here, mouth, chin, nose, one eye a little more wide, and the other eye more normal. But we see what kind of looks like a tablet here. It looks like he's holding something. And the reason why I found that is because I saw a triangulation to the land, and I went to the top because Moses goes to the top of the mountain. You see this? How there's like a triangular formation? So I went to the top to see where that was, and I went there. So it's kind of like Moses going to the top of the mountain. And here we see what looks like an extraterrestrial head. And we go to take a look at the ETs found over in Peru.
Mhm.
And what do you know? It looks very similar to who those people are. So, is it possible that the story of Moses is somehow related to ETs and earthworks found across the world, earthworks that you could only truly appreciate from the sky?
Yeah, those are the kind of stuff I was talking about. So, like, that's right. So there would have to be some connection there. There would have to be. I remember years and years ago, I was actually in rehab. And many years ago. And one of the guys, I was in one of the guys, but he was telling me how there was things he couldn't tell me, but that he told me enough to connect the dots of what you've kind of the stuff you've shown us today, like even what you just showed us, including pyramids, and how he had seen the same types of things on other planetary objects. Okay, and that's all he would really say. So I mean, I think this you know this stuff is important, but I think what we're going to find is that it goes far beyond uh, Mother Earth. Uh, you know what I mean? Like our ancestry runs, we might say, galactic, or even beyond that. Um, do you feel like that I don't want to say the answers, but do you feel like that our expansion is better served? I mean, I'm talking about physical embodiment, even like what you're doing here, by exploring Mother Earth in the physicality or out into the cosmos in the physicality, so to speak.
I think that all of the answers that we need can be found on Earth. As for the rest of the answers that we don't necessarily need, we can look elsewhere, but Basically, everything that we need to know has been recorded both within the earth and within ourselves. And if only we work more towards connecting to that, then truly can we appreciate the answers we've been given before we start to focus more on the things that we don't necessarily need to know, but may want to know. Um, I know that we're getting close to wrapping up here, but there's an
And I mean,
earthwork in
yeah.
Mauritania, which I believe could be the tiller of the earthwork. Because as you've seen with the whole Noah's Ark and Moses, and this could actually be just as much of a face, with this being a beard, a mouth, a mustache, nose, eye, going into the crown, as it could be a man reaching down with a bowl to possibly water the garden because of all the desert that's in Central Asia. And we see these elements here. And if we think about how much of that has been reshaped, well, what do? You cut down trees and you plant a garden. You cut down too many trees and you dry out the land. But
Or somebody drops a bomb and turns everything into sand and glass,
well, yeah, that too. That's a possibility.
like the
Um,
Sahara.
right. And then we go
Uh,
to take a look at the face
here,
here.
share the screen. It's not, you're not sharing.
Oh, I'm not sharing the screen.
No, no, no.
Hold on.
I thought you were setting it up and bypassing.
My apologies.
No, no, that's all right.
Okay, so this would be like the head. You can see the eyes here. That's over in Northern Asia. This would be more Northeast Asia. Um, well, shoot. How can we get back to that? Okay, hold on. We'll get back to this. Okay, so this is what I believe to be the tiller of the earthwork. Notice how there are some elements revealing how the people may have described Asia through a person tilling the earth. And there's even other aspects, like this could be a nose, that could be a mouth, this could be a chin of a person being face up. But basically, the earth is being turned up. And this could be a bowl where the person is letting some water out into the earth to water the field. But it could also be viewed as a face where this is a beard, that's the mustache, that's the nose, this is the eye, there's the eyebrow, the eyebrow ridge, the crown. So it may be hair and other iconography that we still have yet to learn, but this could be the boot right here. So
It's
we
hard to
see a
see. It's really hard to see.
okay. Do you
Really
see
hard to
how
see.
this could be like a shoe?
No, it's really hard to see. You're moving really fast. Uh,
My apologies. Do you see how this could be a calf leg? Like that would be the calf leg. This would be the front of the leg.
yeah. I mean,
Are
I
you
could see
able
it.
to?
Well, I could see it being like a guy with a big left arm too, and that's
Oh,
his fist. The boot
okay.
part you're talking about is, yeah. But I mean, yeah. I mean, for you, it's very easy. You said I can see
Right.
the top there. You can definitely see that. But
And, and
for you,
and
I mean, it's very familiar to you. I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah, you and your friends. I mean, it's a very familiar thing. I mean, I'm trying to connect the dots, so we can relate. And again, it's very fascinating, and it looks like it's a deep, comprehensive amount of material that you have showed us, and that's probably out there that you'll discover, in the future. Um, but again, I think, one of my questions is, again, do you feel that these things were basically formed uh, and by the people that, let's just say, that came in after the terraforming, or that came in after the flood, uh, and that the significance of them is they're replicating certain, let's just say, certain beings or certain consciousnesses. That, in other words, they carry certain energies as a result of the way they're made, which is probably beneath what we're looking at based on some kind of geometry.
Well, I think that a lot of
Does that
these
make sense?
things would have had to have been formed in the past 7,000 years, because that is the approximate time that geologists say the river that separated Northwest Africa as a subcontinent dried. And if we think about these things as still being there, still being preserved, think about the rains. If you're dealing with an environment with rain, then a lot of things are eventually going to be washed away, either through flood or erosion over time. Of course, people may have worked to preserve certain earthworks for a long period of time and maybe placed rocks and other things there to help preserve those things. But if you really think about a wet environment being able to preserve these things, I don't think that is very plausible. So I think that one of the reasons why our environment dried up is because the ancient world turned our world into art. And some of these things could be a whole lot older. Some of these things are not necessarily as old, but for whatever reason, I cannot find for the life of me the ET head map of Africa. But I made images that are a whole lot more clearer, that are enhanced. But try to think about this as being one eye here, very large eye, and then the other eye is around here. And then there's this white mark that could be viewed as, maybe towards the pupil or whatever, maybe this region right here. And this would
Yeah,
be the
again,
other one.
it's very difficult. I can see, I mean, it's very difficult. It's, to me, this would take a long time and a very intricate presentation to really be able to grasp from a layman's standpoint. Okay. I mean, for you and your friends, this would probably be, too slow. You know what I mean? But, uh, but yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting, very intriguing, and I'm always open to learning new things, and seeing what a person is, into, and you know, what really is their passion, and what makes them thrive. Um, very, very interesting though. You spend a lot of time doing this.
Yes, I do. And if I could share just one more thing, because I know we only have a few minutes left, maybe only two or so. But if we take a look at one of the earliest gods of ancient Egypt, Apis or Apis, spelled Apis. I have this as the background from my page. And we can notice very easily how this ox, we see how the tail goes to separate the arid regions from the vegetative regions of Africa. How well can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that line that looked like a tail. Yeah, a small tail. Yeah.
And it even takes you to these islands. There's islands here in case you didn't know that. But then it also helps take you up through where the river used to flow through, all the way past Portugal and Spain, mostly Spain. And then it takes you on a travel route moving past the UK and Ireland. And then it takes you over a little further, moving past the Arctic Circle, where Iceland is and Greenland. And in this interpretation, they viewed the what could be more of like a bear head face as being that of an ox. And maybe there was more ice around these parts at this time, or maybe the sea levels were a little lower, but they viewed it as the head of an ox. And if we take a look at the horn, it has a sun crown to it if you saw it from another angle. But when you see it moving upward just like this, we see how they they learned how to travel to this island region here and over here, and then from there moving south
But
from
how would they learn how to travel with these things if they're on the land, unless these things were in alignment with, well, let's just say with the stars and um, the celestial.
well, the ancient people were very aware of the stars. They
Yeah, no, I'm
would
just saying,
have
are these is this lined up with a constellation, or because I know when I lived in Hawaii, remember going to this, I guess, like a museum thing, and it talked about how the natives originally started to travel, hundreds of miles through the ocean in these little boats, and they used the stars.
if you think about the level of awareness the ancestors
Yeah.
had for how they would have calculated where they were exactly on the earth, they would have drawn a map out for everyone, and they would have made artifacts like this. And this could technically be one of those replicas from a website made to look exactly like the original. That I'm not entirely certain, but they would have known the world so well that it would have been no problem for them. And that's why they would have created artifacts like these, so that way people would learn how to get around. Because when you take a look at this, at the bottom, it literally teaches you how to travel to the Great Lakes. And you know, because you're in the community that shares a lot of these things, that a whole lot of copper was mined from the Great Lakes. And it's just really amazing to see that an ancient civilization like Egypt has one of its first gods,
Well,
Apis.
I mean, it's a very interesting thing. I mean, I'm telling you, it's a very uh let's see, hang on. It brings up a lot of, it brings up a lot of questions, a lot of conversations. And, again, going back to the indigenous, many ones, the Dogon tribe, the Hopis, the Aborigines, that the sky people, in particular, in most cases, the Pleiadians, came down and provided them with the information that created these massive leaps. And again, you can go to Samaria, you can go to many different places where you see evidence of that, and it's again like a template all over the world. So yeah, I could see where if we had ancestors that came to the earth, gave us the information, explained everything to us, such as, for instance, Sirius B explained to the Dogon tribe and documented by the Dogon tribe, and not discovered by modern contemporary man until the 1930s, right? So I could see where the higher, we might say the higher intelligences or our ancestors came down, provided us the information. This is how you terraform. This is how you navigate. This is how you build the byways and the highways and the seaways, and it to be to a point where it's this iconic type of uh, presentation, like such as something like this. I can see that, and if you look at the what we call myths, which I don't think are myths. I don't believe that the Greeks were the Greek gods were myths, or so many other things. Um, that this is how it's been passed down, so that we could carry on the information. And of course, it's like anything. It's like when somebody gets a download, because we're humans, it's gonna lose some of its purity as it goes through the human process. So what we're looking at to me is like one big human, all the downloads come into it, all the history come into it, and we're kind of putting the pieces together. And this is very intriguing, and I really appreciate you spending time with us for the last hour and a half. It's been very informative.
Thank you. And I really wish that I could have shared more with you because there's just so much more to the story than what I shared with you today. But as I'm looking through my phone trying to find the overlays to the ET image, it's just the strangest thing because I, I had it on social media all prepared, and it's just weird how maybe that's something that's meant to be shared for the next time if you're interested in me being on the show again.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, right now I counted them a while ago, 51 messages to get back to. So,
Okay.
and these are all people who've never been on before. So, but I don't know. I'm just going through, this is what the 40, what did I say? The 49th show that I've done this year. And, I'm used to doing 65 a month. So I'm just kind of getting back into it. But yeah, I really do appreciate you taking the time. It was very thorough. And I wish you the best on it always. Blessings of grace to you and yours and all your endeavors. Um, Keep on trucking, all right?
Absolutely. And if I'm able to find the post, can I leave it in the comments for this
Yeah, of
video?
course. Yeah, you can go put anything you want in the comments. That's fine. Absolutely,
Okay.
100%. All right, man. Well, you take care. I'm gonna go get a little hot tea and relax and keep doing what you're doing. All right.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thank you
brother.
so much for letting me
Yes.
share everything.